Every time I see you post on LinkedIn, I see like, what the hell is Jesse doing now? What is he's created this? He's got that. He's got a book. He's got a podcast. He's got a live stream. He's got an audiobook. He's got a bungee jumping now. So it's always something. And then obviously I've created one thing. I've created a newsletter. So,
well, one, you nailed it with kind of how you did this introduction. And Tats also, not just Tats, several people ask me like, Jesse, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you? What do you do? You like, I read your description on your LinkedIn profile and I can't figure out what you do.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Matt Graves, and welcome to another Construction Curiosities video interview. This week, we have Jesse Hernandez. What's up, Jesse?
What's going on, Matt? I'm excited, man. I'm trying to tone it down a little bit. We'll see if it works.
Don't tone. Let's go. Full throttle. Hey, people who don't know who you are, give them a little bit of introduction of yourself.
Yeah, so I'll be humble. I'm a salsa dancing, podcasting, book writing, construction professional, and I'm trying to figure out how to spend all my time introducing people to the promise they are intended to be. That's me. I came up as a plumber, right out of high school, started working in construction, got into an apprenticeship. My dad's a plumber. I spent about 20 years working for mechanical contractors. Spent about 3.5 years working for a large general contractor. Spent about 9 months working for owner operator. And then I think I'm at like 9 months as being an independent consultant. So like you can tell as time went by, I just kept picking jobs with less credibility. Sorry, that's a joke.
I love it though. That's I need to get on that train. No. So you're based out of Texas, right? San Antonio?
San Antonio, Texas, born and raised on the south side of San Antonio. I still live on the south side because the community did a lot in putting up with me when I was coming up. And I feel like it's necessary for me to stay here and set a decent example and give back as much as I can. Actually, tomorrow I'm doing a live stream at one of the local schools here, and I'm like juiced up about it, man, because that's important to me. It's really, really.
What do you do? What kind of live stream?
What's that?
What kind of live stream?
They asked me to speak. It's the CAST system. It's like a charter school within the district, and they what they're doing, they're bringing in professionals with different types of career backgrounds to speak to the students, and they live stream the presentation to all of their campuses, which I don't know how many campuses there are, so I'm definitely not going to be cussing tomorrow, but it's just as important thing. So it's like it's going to be at what used to be Fox Tech High School, which is like a really old historic school in downtown San Antonio from my school district, SAISD. So it's a huge opportunity. I'm excited about it.
That's so cool, man. I guess it's the schools in the San Antonio area, or is it a nationwide organization, these charter schools?
I should probably know that. I'm glad maybe this won't be out until after tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know if it's a national thing. It probably is. But I don't know for sure.
Right on. Okay, I'll give you some homework to do before tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
So one thing I know me and you've talked about is kind of we actually connected through LinkedIn, and that's really, I've been using LinkedIn a lot and kind of getting to know a lot of people. It's been such a cool platform. What's your thoughts on LinkedIn? Man,
originally I got on, or just social media in general. I used to use Facebook, and that was just to like fart around with my friends and post dumb, inappropriate stuff, right? And I had LinkedIn because at work they told me you should have a LinkedIn it's a professional network. Like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I started kind of finding really good articles on LinkedIn. And so we're talking 10 plus years ago where I would go and find an article or two and send it to a friend so they could think I'm smart. And that was like it until I started the podcast. when I started the podcast, then it was like, well, why ain't people downloading it? Well, because people don't know about it. Like, well, how do you help people know about it? We'll post on social media. Like, oh, so that really triggered the frequency of me interacting on social media. And on LinkedIn, it was interesting. I was getting far more, like a whole lot more interaction on LinkedIn than I was on the Facebook, right? But because all of a sudden I'm posting appropriate stuff on Facebook, and my friends are like, this dude just got a job, right?
He grew up, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like this guy. Who is this guy? But LinkedIn, I started connecting with a bunch of super like-minded people. And at first it was just real passive, right? Like I would hit a like and hit smiley face or whatever. I might make a comment every once in a while, but once I understood it or shifted my thinking to see it as social marketing instead of social media, then it had meaning and purpose. And then like accidentally, I think this is what happened, because the comments and posts and whatever were like tied to the podcast. Some people took a risk and listened to the podcast. And then when they listen to it, once in a while, I'll say something really smart. And I think that started earning me credibility. And then more and more people, like that, my connection list started growing. And then it got to a point where it was just random people like, hey, man, I've seen you. You got time? Let's have a call. And almost every time, there's only one call that I can think of offhand that I had with somebody that reached out directly on LinkedIn that was like, I'm not talking to you again. But the time was like, has been amazing. Like you and I, we've had several conversations and we'll have more to come in the future. So yeah, that's kind of how it all came together now. And now it's like every day I'm on it, like every single day I'm on it.
It's funny. It's kind of almost a very similar story of how I got on there. Cause I mean, I've had it for probably, I don't even know. I probably can find out probably a decade or something, or longer, where, it was just a resume, right? You don't go on there and you log in every 4 years when you got a new job and you'd update your employment history, and I'm working here now.
Yes.
And then I started using it, just kind of posting project updates, sort of just kind of like, hey, I'm working on this project and we just completed this and here's a couple photos and whatnot. And then I created this newsletter, very almost similar to your podcast. And I was like, I created something. All right, I gotta sell it. It's free, but I gotta sell it, right? Yep. And so then I started posting more on there, and then just kind of sell this, and then you kind of fall into these, like I've kind of sort of fallen into a construction circle. Actually, I shared this thing the other day, and I think we talked about it a couple of days ago, where there's like 6.5 million people in the construction industry on LinkedIn and 2,900 active contributors. And I think I know them all now.
Yes, they're all my people.
And but it's like you kind of fall in that circle, and it's like it's become super helpful where we've been looking for software at work, like at my day job, and like I'll post like, hey, we're looking for some software, and like I'll just get flooded with advice and comments and help, or I'll just get some half crazy idea and I'll post it on there, and either everybody will tell me I'm crazy and correct me, which is cool because I'm learning, or people are like, oh no, I agree with that because of this, this, and this. And it's been just, I found LinkedIn to be way more like authentic, I guess, maybe because it's tied to your professional life. Yeah. And I mean, there are some people in there that's, it's like, look at me, I'm awesome, because I did this and this. But if you kind of get through that, there's been a lot more authentic people. Less trolls that you might find, on Facebook or 100%. Anywhere else. So it's been real cool. So another thing I was want to talk to you about was, we've both sort of created something. I think you've created a bunch of somethings. I don't even know what all you've created. Every time I see you post on LinkedIn, I see like, what the hell is Jesse doing now? He's created this. He's got that. He's got a book. He's got a podcast. He's got a live stream. He's got an audio book. He's got a bungee jumping now.
That's awesome.
So it's always something. And then obviously I've created one thing. I've created a newsletter. So what are some takeaways and learnings, I guess, that you've had as you've kind of building a creative something to kind of help the industry?
Well, one, you've nailed it with kind of how you did this introduction. And Tats also, not just Tats, several people ask me, like, Jesse, what the hell are you doing? Like, what are you? What do you do? You like, I read your description on your LinkedIn profile, and I can't figure out what you do. And I got all kinds of stuff and so that's one thing that I've learned is the pace at which ideas come into my head does not align with the pace at which people are going to digest the content. So if I have a new idea and I put in my head, it all makes perfect sense, right? My purpose is to introduce people to the promise they're intended to be. That's it. Everything that I'm going to do is a step forward in that direction that can bring people along for that ride. Super clear to me, but bungee jumping, salsa dancing, live stream, podcast, book, audio book, like all this stuff, like what is it? And I know it's connected. And I also know that some of that stuff is going to crash and burn. So why not run concurrent experiments? Right? Let's see what best serves people. I think it's going to serve people, but the people are going to tell me whether they value it or not. Like if it's providing value to them, then I do more of that. The other thing, if they ignore it, okay, I stop doing that. So that's why it's super messy. Plus, I have zero patience. Like I get an idea and I want to do that damn thing. Like, let's go, baby. So one learning is that, like, slow down, or maybe be more, maybe use the messaging, like the words, to help people make the connections that are all in my head, right? That's one thing. Another thing is, even if I did that, there's still a lot of people that think I'm crazy. Right? Like my family, they think I'm like, what are you doing? You quit your job. You had an amazing job. I was traveling the country, had major responsibility and influence. And I decided to start my consulting business right after I bought a house. Right? Like, I said, what? It's going to be fine. Like it's going to work. And so, but here was the important thing is I needed to have the space, the brain space, to work on building this business because I didn't know what I was doing. Now I was laying seeds beforehand, but they came to a point where like, okay, it's time to like do it or don't do it. And so that's another important lesson. And I think we probably all have this same situation was, I thought it was going to take me a year before I got my first paying client. I had my first paying client within a week.
That's awesome. And
then I reached my revenue target within the first 60 days of quitting my job. Like I got worked out a deal with an amazing client and I still didn't have my damn business email address set up. Right? The first gig I did, they're like, man, okay, hey, send me an invoice. This way I can have the check for you on the day of the event. And I'm like, I don't even know how to send an invoice. So the lesson I learned is, and it's really important, and I wish I knew it way back in my 20s, but it doesn't matter now, is people will always remember the experience you provide them. The experience that they have with me over the past recent times is what signaled to them and said, hey, we want to work with that crazy guy again. Right? Oh, he's not working for them anymore. Hey, man, can you come over here? We got this one thing. Like, you're the right guy because of the experience I provided them over time, right? Like with consistency. And so I had no reason to be worried. I just didn't know that. I didn't know how much people really wanted to work with me. And that was a huge, it's been beautiful. It's been amazing. And I think the last one is, I never saw myself as a creative person. Like I actually would say that I am not creative. I'm not a creative guy. I'm a process guy. I'm a numbers guy. Like I don't care what it looks like. Does it work? And what I found is by investing in self-care and kind of doing what I'm doing with my business has given me more time to not be distracted with the urgency of what my day jobs used to hit me with.
Right.
And because I don't have that distraction, the volume, well, not just because of the distraction, like I don't have the distractions, plus I have more time to spend talking to people like you, Jen, Adam, Keon, like Felipe, Jason. Like I have a lot of time to really interact with really forward-thinking people that are contributing to make the industry better.
Mm-hmm.
And like the combination of that, I got ideas all the time. I have a board on my Trello board. It's called the Idea Incubator. And it's like the thing I use to discipline myself. It's not like, oh, this is my next $1 million idea. It's because I get an idea and I want to chase it.
Yeah.
And when I go chase it, guess what I'm not doing? I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
So I say, okay, idea, put it in the incubator, slide the card over. And then if I get my work done for the day, then I get to play with the idea. That's exactly what it is, because I don't have many of them. So anyway,
it becomes the carrot. It becomes a carrot for you. Just get your job done.
It becomes a carrot for me, yes, because otherwise, man, I'll work. You know, I left the full-time work because I didn't want to be like working 16 hours a day and walking away with very little equity.
Right.
But I was still working 16 hours a day because I was chasing every stupid idea. So like, okay, that ain't cool either. I don't want to work 16 hours a day anymore. So it just a mechanism I had to put in play to manage myself.
It's fun. I think we're both coming to the same middle ground. You started on one end of like chasing every rabbit. I started on the other end where like before I acted, I mean, you just act, right? You get an idea, you act. Yeah. That's your nature. And I've started on the other end where I get an idea, I want to research it and analyze it and research it and analyze it and research it some more. And then like, I think I'm an expert in it. Now I want to act on it. I started this the other day about SEO. Like I started a blog a couple years, 3 years ago, and it's got 10 articles on it. I became an SEO expert. I did a ton of research before I really even started. Right. And so I'm trying to be more, get an idea, kind of at least get a couple steps, right. And then act. And so that's serving me a lot better because I feel like I'm getting a lot more done. And then I think you're finding the same spot, but you're coming from the other angle.
I'm coming from the other side. Like, stop acting on everything, goofball. Like actually this year, I was talking to Davis Hambrick from the Lane Foundations podcast.
Oh yeah.
We were having a call and I was telling him like, okay, I got for this 2023. And he's like, when are you going to do all of that? I was like, first quarter. And he's like, and I'm like, I said, and as we're talking through it, I was like, man, that's really going to confuse people. He said, yeah, like, why don't you just focus on one thing? And like, in me, that repulses me. Like, shoot, watch me. I'm going to do it all. But then we started, the conversation went down like, well, how are you going to market those things? Like, let people know what's happening. Mm-hmm. And if I act on all of them at the rate that I want to act on them, there's no runway for marketing. There's no space for me to introduce the thing and people get used to seeing it before I introduce the next thing. Like it's Cracker Jacks and macaroni and cheese and Ferrari and airplanes, like all at the same time. And then I just lose everybody. So I said, okay, first quarter A, second quarter B, third quarter C, and here we are.
That's funny because I think that's kind of how when I first reached out to you, I was like, dude, you sound interesting, but I don't know what you do. Like, what are you doing?
Yes.
I think you have your own business. I'm not even sure of that, but
that's true. So many people have done that. And, it's my time. It's kind of hard. It's difficult to explain. I kind of want it that way. Right.
Yeah.
And for weird reasons, because I'm a tradesman. I came up as a plumber. And and I love hearing this, like, you were a plumber? Like, yeah, like craft workers are very creative, entrepreneurial type thinkers.
Right.
I've just had a situation where I had access to resources that enabled me to like keep exploring and creating different things. So I like that part. It's really important to me that I don't get pigeonholed, or I don't pigeonhole myself into one thing, because I had this realization. It's been a year or so, but I was thinking about, like, when I was planning to leave and make the full-time thing, like go independent, I knew that was going to happen. And then the question becomes like, man, can I really do it? Can I make it like, and am I going to be stuck doing that for the next 20 years? Because that's not sexy in my head. I want to do new stuff.
Right.
And so I had this, like, all of a sudden, like, well, wait a minute. The work that I'm getting paid for right now, I built that body of work over the past 5+ years. Like, I built the experience and the knowledge base to earn a high level of compensation today, doing what I was learning over the past 3 to 8 years.
Right.
Okay. And like, oh, that happened over and over again along in my career. Like, okay. So if I launch my business as a consultant and earn my money through serving organizations and helping them earn buy-in with their teams and all the magical stuff, right? Do lean stuff. What is the thing, the knowledge base that I'm learning while I'm doing the thing I'm getting paid for? And I'm like, oh, that's important, because now I can do it on purpose. So I'm earning my living doing or selling the skill that I built over the past 3-8 years, while I'm building the knowledge base of what I will be earning money for in the next 3 to 5 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And I also know that my learning cycle around things is about 3 to 5 years. I spend 3 to 5 years doing something, and then it's really challenging and it's exciting, and then it's like, okay, this is boring. I need something else. So knowing those two things is a large reason why I work on keeping it kind of ambiguous and interesting, because where I am today personally, I never could have written that out. No BS with Jen and Jess. That was not on the agenda. Writing a book, having an audio book, podcast, like all of that junk was not on the agenda. That has come as a result of finally figuring out that if I work in serving others and just take the next rightest step, amazing things will reveal itself. And so that's why I try to keep it loosey-goosey.
So what was the podcast was your first, call it, creative thing you did? I mean, or what was the first?
Podcast was the first one. Absolutely.
What was the genesis of that?
Podcast. What's that?
Learnings and Missteps podcast, you said?
Yep.
What was the genesis of that? I mean, what made you decide one day he's going to start that?
COVID.
Okay.
Like I was sitting at home. I mean, at the time, my job I was traveling around supporting multiple business units, and because of the lockdown, and my job being a traveling role, they said, you stay home. I'm like, no, I can go visit other jobs. Like, no. You stay home because you're dirty, I guess. No, because I did a lot of stuff. Okay, fine. And so one thing that was like, the job was awesome. I had been doing it, I don't know, a year or two at that point. But because of the traveling role, I was not being engaged with the local schools like I used to be. Like anytime I get invited to go speak to parents, students, or educators, I'm like, yeah, I'm down. I want to go talk to them about careers in the construction industry. Well, because I was traveling all the time, I couldn't do that anymore. And then with the lockdown, I couldn't go work, and nobody was in school. And I'm like, what in the hell's, like, it was hard.
Yeah.
And so I was watching a documentary on Danny Trejo, who's the guy that played Machete, right?
Yeah.
And it was about him. Great story. But at one point, somebody asked him, like, hey, does it bug you? You've been in over 200 movies and almost hardly ever have been the leading man. And he said, no, they pay me. He's like, they pay me, and I get to go and spread my message of recovery at the penitentiary. Like, I'm doing this so I can do this.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Oh, man, yeah. And I was like, oh, dude. I was like, okay, so I have a job. I've got income. I'm complaining because I can't go to the schools and talk to the schools, but I can create I've been on a podcast. It didn't look that hard. That's what I'm going to do. And so then I just kind of figured it out. And like you said, man, starting that podcast is one of the two things that got me to where I am today. I mean, like, in terms of the amount of creativity, the amount of static you see, and all the stuff that I'm putting out there, all the craziness, Chewy and the Grinch, like stuff like that, bro. I never would have done. Never would have done. But
that was the seed for it all, huh?
Yeah, no way, man. I was too cool for that. Really too intimidated.
That's funny, man. So we talked a minute ago about emotional bungee jumpers. I think that's your latest and greatest. As long as you passed on whatever Davis had you working on. But,
yes. Yeah, man. So emotional bungee jumpers. Actually, Stephanie Brown with Intelligent Construction Opportunities came up with those words. Right? She and I were talking, and she was talking about how crazy I am and how I just post stuff out there. Like, I don't care what. I mean, I kind of do care, but not so much I'm going to spend another hour on it. It's like whatever, I'll figure it out. I'll get the next one will be better. And so she made that observation. She's like, Jesse, watching you is like emotional bungee jumping because you just go and it's like scary, but it ends up not being bad. And so those words always stuck with me. And that's like the experience that I want to introduce people to, right? Taking that step, and you know it because you're doing it. Taking the step from thinking about something to writing it down is a little scary. And going from writing it down to saying it to another human being, that's a little scary. And then actually doing something in the direction of that idea is freaking terrifying. So that's the feeling emotional bungee jumping is intended to encapsulate. Now, the experience that it's wrapped around, which is it's a social. We have monthly calls, and there's like a private social media element to it. But the experience is centered around is people learning how to say, I have a problem. I'm struggling at something. That's not easy for people. It also centers, you've been through it. Me, you, and Chris did it. So it's centered around that exercise, right? It's centered around me as a leader learning how to listen and not solutionize the hell out of the person with the problem. Just listen and ask interested questions. Not interesting, interested. I'm interested in understanding what your thinking is. That's it. And it also requires people to give feedback and receive feedback. And that's not an easy thing. But the people that have been through it have all said, like, oh, man, it seemed like kindergarten, but son of a gun, that was a significant experience. Yeah. And so because of all of that, it's like, ooh, let's do this, bam. And so that's the latest one. That's the one I'm focused on for first quarter.
That's that solutionizing exercise that me and Chris with Allen Elevators did. That's it's tough because it's to tease what you're doing, but essentially you can't ask leading questions. You got to ask interested questions, help them kind of work through their problems. And it's so many times I bit my tongue of like asking a question, but like, cause I'm so used to like, as a project manager, I have a goal in sight, right? And everything's a negotiation almost, right? So I'm trying to get you to where I want you to be. So I ask these questions to walk you to where I want to take you. not to where that person wants to take or needs to take themselves, I guess is really what it is.
That's the difference. Yes. And
It's
and like in terms of like professional development, like I remember back when I knew everything, and if everybody would just listen to me, everything would be perfect.
that's not the way it is.
No, definitely not. And what I like looking back, I would get really frustrated with my team because they wouldn't make a decision. They wouldn't show initiative, right? They wouldn't step up. But you know what? They weren't allowed to because I always had the answer. And so by always giving them the answer, always making sure they did what I wanted them to do, the way I wanted them to do it, I created dependency. They were dependent on me because of me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, damn, that sucked. And so like that's the thing that's solutionizing, right? That's what solutionizing does. It creates that dependency. And this exercise, and more importantly, this community, the emotional bungee jumpers, is to specifically add some tools. Like, don't stop doing it because sometimes you got to tell a fool what they got to do, and that's it. But I also need to build capabilities within my people, and so this is another tool to contribute to that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good skill to have, and it's tough to learn. So it takes reps, right? Like it takes practice. Me, Jennifer, it's the same person. Me, Jennifer, Adam, Kirby, Sean Moran, and Alicia. We've been doing that for about a year, once a month. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, we've been doing it, and they've all experienced tremendous value from it. So that's where the idea, like, oh wow, they're getting something out. I knew it was fun for me because I know the game, and everybody squirms, and I love watching that. But then we did it with me, you, and Chris, and I'm like, man, there's something here. And then I'm trying to figure out like building online businesses. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Everything connected, and bam, emotional bungee jumpers.
Let's go.
Yes.
So earlier on LinkedIn, I decided to throw you a curveball. It was based on an Alex Lieberman post. It wasn't planned. I saw an Alex Lieberman post, the Morning Brew guy, one of the Morning Brew guys, and he was interviewing Gary Vaynerchuk, and he basically said, what do y'all want me to ask Gary Vaynerchuk? So I'm not going to say I stole his idea, but I borrowed his idea. I said, hey, I'm interviewing Jesse later. What do you want me to ask him? And I got a couple questions.
Yes.
Clyde King, that dude's awesome, man. He's been posting, I think, 130 some odd consecutive days of random construction thoughts. Have you seen that?
Yes.
Man, he's been going strong, and he's got some good insights. He's a carpenter by trade, and anyway. But and this actually kind of ties into your school conversations you've been having. So he said, what does Jesse feel is one major thing that could bring people to the trades?
Oh man, the one thing I know that makes a tremendous impact, and Steve Turner with Bring Back the Trades had a similar post. I know that when I physically take my body, like my person, and go to the campus and interact with those students. And I don't mean doing the slideshow and my company's awesome. Look at all our benefits. Ugh. Like that's important, right? There's value in that.
Right.
But when I go and talk to them directly about what it feels like, about what it looks like, and go into the shop and show them some stuff like, hey, how do you do this? Oh, well, like this is what I would do, or just kind of demonstrate what it takes to like do something. That's what it takes. I mean, for me, the number one thing is, and actually, I'm going to share a cheat code. I might get in trouble. Sorry, Stacy. So there's a local contractor here in town. Their workforce development program, I mean, obviously, they got, an internal apprenticeship program, DOL approved, benefit, like they got all that stuff. But the way they connect with students is whenever there's like a career fair or whatever it is where the high school students are going to be there, they have actively been recruiting high school graduates from CTE programs here in San Antonio. And so they still have relationships. They're only a year or two out of high school, and they still have friends that are in that high school. So they get those people, those men and women, young men and women that are on the clock, and say, hey, we need you to go to this career fair. And why is that important? It's important because, Matt, you and I are old dudes.
Don't say that.
Right? They don't think we're as cool as we think we are. They're not as with all the wisdom and experience and knowledge we have as we want them to be. But that 19-year-old or 20-year-old, they know them. And so they can see themselves like, oh, that dude, like we were in gym together.
Right.
He likes it, maybe I'll like it. Like they've cracked the nut. I mean, I think there's a lot of other things, but for me, it's the personal, direct connection with those students, listening to them and demonstrating to them that we need you, we honor you, and this is what it feels like, man, like straight up.
Dude, that is such a cheat code because, I mean, I can look back and I'm 36 now, and a lot of days I do feel like an old man, right? And I remember being 18 years old. I mean, when I was 18, in high school, 36 was an old man. Like, you look at him and like, I've got a lot of gray hairs, and I remember like thinking like, man, 30, that's old. Like, yes. So you don't connect with them. And so having somebody that, personally, or, can speak your same language, and you just kind of, that is a good cheat code. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you know why people don't send those young apprentices that are entering the trade?
Probably don't trust what they're going to say.
Yeah. Right. The marketing department has a problem with what the messaging might be. HR is like, no. I mean, here's another thing that a lot of organizations do is they will only send HR professionals to that. They need to be sending operations people too. Like send them all. But getting those kids that are on the clock, you're going to lose a little bit of production time, but it's a short-term loss for major long-term payback.
It's a great investment. I mean, you're spending, you lose half a day, or, you lose a whole day. I mean,
man,
that's not much money.
I lose that waiting on tacos. Like, that ain't nothing.
Next question. Lance, I'm going to butcher his name. Furuyama. Sorry, Lance, if you're listening, I apologize in advance, but he says, ask Jesse what Chewy thinks about him becoming a podcast star. Did Chewy ever see this coming? Did he ever see you being an internet, social media?
Man, y'all gonna get Chewy pissed, and I'm gonna feel it. That's an awesome question. Chewy thinks I'm a poser, right? I got my hair done, and I got the button-up shirt all the way to the last button. Chewy thinks I'm a sellout, and that I need to just be like I used to be. That's what Chewy thinks. You know what? I think let's see how he feels. But I think Chewy is going to send me a video to post tomorrow morning. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll see.
I was secretly hoping Chewy would lock you in a closet and show up for this interview.
Oh, no. He already said Chewy don't do interviews.
Fair enough. Jesse, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for it's always a good laugh whenever we get together, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Nobody learns anything. If they want to get in touch with you and get you if they want to bungee jump with you, how can they get you?
Oh, man. The two best ways to get me is one on LinkedIn, because like I said, I pretty much live on there. I have accounts on all the other socials, but LinkedIn is where I spend a lot of time. And also the website, depthbuilder.com. Depth is in like deep relationships, deep trust, deep vulnerability. Depthbuilder.com. And then you can click around and find whatever you want and hit me up. Like, I'm happy to connect. You know that.
Yeah. He's easy. He's easy to find.
Yes, sir.
When the Grinch isn't in charge.
Freaking Chewy question. Come on, man.
I appreciate it, Jesse. Thanks, man.
All right, bro. Later.
We'll see you.